planetary emergency. Those phrases may sound shrill to those who are not used to hearing them, but the entire world scientific community just 2 weeks ago joined together again in a unanimous.
What size is your carbon footprint?
The carbon footprint's there. That I don't know.
Thousands in wasted energy. It's the damage to your bottom line. It's the threat to your entire business. Carbon costs. To cut it and save up to 20% on your energy bill. Call the Carbon Trust.
There was once a land where the weather was very, very strange. There were awful heat waves in some parts, and in others terrible storms and floods. Scientists said it was being caused by too much CO2, which went up into the sky when the grown-ups used energy. They discovered that over 40% of the CO2 was coming from ordinary everyday things like keeping houses warm and driving cars.
Is there a happy ending?
It's up to us how the story ends. See what you think.
On every green leaf there are millions of submicroscopic little one-man factories turning out more sugar than all the ships and railroads in them carry. And the head man of each factory is a little green molecule called chlorophyll. Here's the way we think he works. The veins of the leaf bring him water from the roots. From the air, he grabs a molecule of carbon dioxide, CO2. He puts a water molecule and a carbon dioxide molecule together. He reaches for a piece of sunlight. Piece by piece, he adds more sunlight to his sugar cake. Out of this sugar or sunshine cake, the tree makes leaves, trunk, roots, and fruit.
Climate change is becoming one of the biggest problems the world faces. That looked into climate change projects that in the absence of policies to control carbon emissions, global temperatures will increase by 2.8 degrees Celsius on average by the year 2050. Notably, taxing and public spending is central, indeed indispensable, for both mitigating and adapting to climate change.
Cap and trade. It's a massive tax increase in the midst of a recession. It's a Wall Street trading scheme complete with a Federal Reserve Board of carbon credits.
Can you just clear up? I mean, there seems to be sunspot cycles, solar flare cycles. Is that the same thing? Is there a difference?
They're all connected. The sunspots appear in numbers according to the electromagnetic cycle of the sun. Then it's actually pulsing. It's vibrating and pulsing. And it has a web, an electromagnetic web, which extends out from its center all the way to the Earth and beyond. And that web is also pulsing. And there are cycles within that we simply don't understand. And they are short-term cycles, 11 and 22 years. There's a 70-year cycle. There's a doubling of that. And there are 400, 1,500, and possibly 5,000-year cycles in relation to the sun.
The only evidence that man is causing warming is computer models. Yet the computer models are wrong. When tested against past warming, the computer models predicted rapid warming at high elevations in the tropics and northern latitudes. Actual measurements from the same time period clearly show the models simply do not predict reality. In spite of the overwhelming evidence that man is not causing global warming, Congress passed a very dangerous cap-and-trade bill last June.
The vote was 219 to 212, but it was interesting. One Democrat talked to me, a friend of mine, and I said, well, how are you going to vote on this bill? He said, well, I'm going to vote for the bill, but then he sort of whispered, he says, "But I sure hope it doesn't pass."
The Senate is getting ready to consider that very same bill. Congressional and White House leadership assure us that it will only cost the average family a couple of $100s a year. Analysis by independent groups clearly show that it is extremely expensive. It represents the largest tax increase in American history. When the real impacts of this bill start to hit, gasoline costs would rise to the mid-$4 range. Energy costs alone for an average family will go up by over $1,200 a year. Overall living costs, including taxes, will go up by nearly $5,000 a year for an average family. There is also an international agreement to create global governance. The United Nations has been attempting to create global governance for decades. World leaders have stated publicly that any climate agreement is designed to implement global governance.
And one of the ways it will drive the change is through global governance and global agreements.
If that happens, totally unaccountable global bureaucrats will be in control of our economy.
They wear a uniform, carry a gun, and patrol the streets of New York City, but they're not NYPD. They're the Green Police. If your emissions are over the limit like this truck's was, you could get slapped with a trip to court and the minimum $700 fine.
The global warming hoax was introduced in 1975 through a conference organized by Margaret Mead. Bringing together the followers of this anti-human doctrine in the United States, the entire conference was run under the presumptions that mankind's development was inherently going to devastate the planet. Scientific accuracy was secondary, and only relevant to the degree that it could be manipulated to justify their desired policy of halting progress and reducing the population.
I fought for wild nature all through my years with Greenpeace, and I'm proud of what we did back then. But I do not understand how people can just write off the whole human race as if it is some kind of cancer on the face of the earth and deserves to be eliminated. That, to me, is an act against humanity.
Despite the High Court judgment that an inconvenient truth contains significant errors, exaggerations, and is politically partisan, the errors and exaggerations still seem to be getting through to children, such as these youngsters from Northern Ireland, who've been educated in the British system.
The ice melts from the earth being too hot, and it washes over and it goes down into the sea. Most of us will die.
Research Climategate, this guy's a fraud, it's a scam! They are trying to institute a global government through a carbon tax! This guy's working on a carbon tax, that's all it is! It's global government! There are 30,000 scientists trying to sue this guy! John Coleman, the founder of the Weather Channel, is suing this bum! You're all in line for this bum! It's a global government! Get your hands off me! First Amendment rights! Get your hands off me!
The bank is releasing a new report on the impacts of climate change in the Latin America and Caribbean region. Can you outline some of the key findings and perhaps some of the impacts that will be unique to the region?
Well, we're seeing actually already many impacts in the region on climate change. Some of the things that we're seeing are melting tropical glacier, problems of water supply and hydropower supply. We're seeing increased prevalence of diseases such as malaria. We're seeing more incidences of floods and hurricanes, very important to the coastal area. We're at risk at seeing declining agricultural productivity.
Laura, forgive me, can we just backtrack for a moment here? Could you remind us of how this scandal developed?
Yeah, of course I can. So it all surrounds around a hacker who got into the University of East Anglia's computers and took from the Climate Research Centre 1,000 emails and 3,000 documents, which he then posted to a server in Russia. So they're all available for everybody to see on the internet. The word trick is used in these emails to describe the analysis of temperature. They've used a trick in order to suggest that temperature for the last 1,000 years has been rising, when in fact skeptics say that temperature has been falling. It's important to look at who all these people are that are involved. Obviously there's Professor Jones, who is the scientist at the heart of this recent leaked email scandal. He stands accused basically of massaging the figures that relate to temperature globally. Then of course there's the University of East Anglia, which is the university that he works for. He's the head of the Climate Research Centre, and that's the top source of temperature data in the world. So it's a very important research institute when it comes to climate change.